Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sex with Ashley. I'm your host, Ashley. And so today we are doing another book talk, and we have Naquan here. And Naquan, so first of all, tell us who you are, and then we'll delve into why you wrote a book and why you think people should read it.
Hey, so what's up, y'all? My name is Naquan Lewis. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, speaker, consultant, and now author of When Trauma is Your Author: The Price Your Relationships Pay and How to Reclaim Your Story.
So, just out of curiosity, what state do you practice in?
Texas. I'm in
Texas.
Houston, Texas, but I practice in all of Texas and I do coaching globally.
Why did you want to write a book about this?
I wrote a book about this, Ashley, because it is the book that I so desperately needed as someone growing up in all the various forms of trauma. I grew up in addiction, domestic violence, abuse of various kinds. And so not understanding the impact and how that shapes your relationships with all things has caused a lot of relational trauma. It's also what all of my demographic of my clients are typically Black women and couples. And I see this every single day. I say these things to my clients every single day. I help them to identify, well, first to create awareness around how trauma is still writing their story, right? Because the first step is awareness. And then I assist them with building a toolbox to interrupt those unhealthy patterns and rewrite a story that is not rooted in the dysfunction and shame, but rooted in their values, principles, and morals and who they are in the present.
Good. So I'm gonna go into first. So you broke your book down into different parts, and so the first part talks about the understanding the cost of trauma, and then one of the chapters, I'm gonna have you talk about that. But then one of the chapters talks about friendships and strong friend mass. So I want you to talk about first, understanding the cost of trauma. What that chapter. You can give me a synopsis of what that part is about, and then I want you to talk about specifically about the friendships stuff.
Okay. So understanding the cost. So many people don't recognize. I can't tell you how many people that have had an early access to it and are like, dang, I really didn't recognize that some of the habits I have, whether it's shutting down, blowing up, is actually a trauma response, and it's impacting my relationships, and it's connected to why I'm having so many issues, in life, whether it's romantic, platonic, or at work. And so recognizing the cost is about building the awareness. It's defining what trauma really is, because people don't tend to know, right?
So let's talk about right quick. So I know one of here is talking about when trauma picks your partners. I've heard that typically when it comes to women, right, when we date our fathers, either we are picking people who are like our fathers, or we're picking people who are the exact opposite of our fathers. That's just what I've heard. I'm not sure how true that is, but that's what I've heard. And particularly with when it comes to daddy issues, that shows up a lot in our romantic relationships, right? So for someone who may be having, well, first of all, so is it true that women are picking partners that are like their father in some regard, either like him or not like him?
So yes, I have found that there is some truth to that. But more than anything, it's about the familiarity. Because think about those of us who didn't grow up with fathers in the house. And we're still picking partners that mirror our wounds and not our worth. It's
Okay.
about the familiarity, what you're taught in relationship. What have you witnessed from your parents growing up or your caregivers, whomever that was, right? If you witnessed dysfunction when it comes around in your relationship, it's not the red flag that it needs to be, because it feels familiar. So if you're dating your father and your father was, again, had some of these dysfunctional habits, then it's about the familiarity. And then, yes, now your partner mirrors your father, or vice versa. Father had good or healthier patterns, and then now your partner has it. It's about the familiarity. It's about the image that you received growing up of your caregivers as a whole.
So I remember I was in college when my best friend, I met my best friend in college. And I remember she was telling me all the time, you have daddy issues. I was like, girl, no, I don't. She would tell me all the time. All right. So she and I had very different relationships with our dads. So my parents were married, and then they paused and took a break. And then they rejoined together. My dad was in the military. So once my dad got out of the military, then my parents kind of got back together. By that time, I was already in high school, and then whatever, they're still together now. And so my dad, even though I knew who he was, and even though, I saw him periodically, he wasn't very active because he didn't he either from the time we stopped living with him when I was like 7. After I was 7 until I was about 15, we didn't live with him. He lived someplace else, another state. So he wasn't very active. And even when we did live with him, my dad was in the house, but he wasn't a hands-on dad. He was a dad like, I'm here, but I'm not like doing things with you. Like, I'm not outside throwing the ball, or I'm in the house with you, like I'm the parent in the house, but we're not reading bedtime stories. My dad was very hands off. It's just how he was. So my best friend, her dad has a very different situation. Her dad was very present in her life. Like she's the only child, so they would do like family trips and her dad would take her, and her parents weren't married. So, but her dad would take her and her cousins like Disney World somewhere every year. Like he lived around the corner, so he was very like there all the time. And so I didn't realize it until, I don't know, I was like, I don't know, I was probably somewhere after college, like, oh, okay. And then I got into other situations with other friends and other boys when I was dating. They were like, oh, you have daddy issues, right? I didn't see it. Like, I didn't see it. So it wasn't until probably, to be honest, probably 5 years ago. I was like 35, and I was like, maybe, all these people, maybe there's something there, right? And I went to a therapist and talked to a therapist about it. So my point in telling this story is, so how can people recognize some of their traumas if they don't see it? Like, because I thought I was fine. Like, I was like, girl, I got no problem. Like, girl, we just, I'm good. So, but it wasn't until other people, and I had to hear it from various people various people that didn't necessarily know each other, and they will all say the same thing. So I'll be like, okay, maybe some truth to this. So how can someone see the traumas before in themselves without taking 25 years like I did?
Listen, when I tell you, Ashley, I wrote this book for us. I wrote this book for us because this is exactly why. It goes back to what I was saying. People don't know what they don't know. And so this book helps you to build awareness by recognizing what's trauma, what's not, how to recognize it. So understanding, like with your situation with dad being, let me just clarify. There was a whole, I don't know if you saw it, but there was a whole podcast thing recently with a couple, and they were dear future wifey. Did you see that?
That's what the woman said, she was honoring her husband's clothes to go see his mistress. Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
I just didn't make a post, but I saw it.
Okay. I did a post. I did a whole post. But
I'm trying to do better about talking about stuff that had nothing to do with me. But I had side conversations with my friends, but I just didn't talk about it.
Okay. So recognizing what's going on and the impact of dad being there, there's this misconception, and I brought up that podcast because that's what they were kind of peddling, for a lack of a better word, but saying like, they wanted this 2-parent home. A 2-parent home is great when it's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not healthy, then you're doing damage, right? Damage is being done to the children. Children statistics shows us that children do better with parents that are healthy, whether they are together or apart. Now, if you can have a 2-parent home where father is present, not just physically, but emotionally, mom is present as well, physically and emotionally, then yes, children do better in 2-parent homes. But if that is not the case, and one or both parents are absent, physically, emotionally, whatever, then harm is being damaged, because we are our children's image of intimacy, of conflict resolution, of friendship, of work ethic, of all the things. And so if you don't have an image, a healthy image, then it is going to show up in how you show up in the world. And that's what's in these chapters in this book.
So how are self-esteem and trauma related? How are they intertwined? Because it's a saying that one of my social media friends says, and she says that people typically date at the level of their self-esteem. So, right. So and once she said this years ago, and once she said that to me, and I was like, you know what? I've had some friends that I like kind of like I let them be, because I understand that, okay, so this is maybe this is where your self-esteem is, right? So how is that relate to trauma too?
It definitely can be. It can be. So trauma can create narratives. This whole book is about reauthoring your story. My training as a licensed marriage and family therapist is also in narrative therapy. That's the theory I was trained in. And so it's teaching people to re-author their stories. We are the author. But trauma will write your story and has written a lot of our stories coming up. And then it is up to us to take the pen back. So if the story that trauma wrote for you regarding your self-esteem is that you're not good enough.
Okay,
You ain't nothing. If your daddy wasn't there for you, then why would anybody else be? All of these narratives that are absolutely lies, rooted in depression and trauma, then that can absolutely shape your self-esteem.
Okay, that's good. So let's talk about friendships right quick. Oh, I'll see on the internet sometimes where women will be like, well, I don't do female friends, right? And so for me, right, if you are a woman and you don't have no female friends, to me, you the problem. But that tells me that you are the problem, right? And maybe I'm wrong, but to me, that's a red flag for me, right? Because I have some very close male friends, but I also have most of my friends are same gender as I am. They're females. And I have some friends that I've been friends with for 20 years, right? Not all my friendships are 20 years, but I have some. And so when people are like, well, I don't trust women, or I don't have no women friends, or it's like the whole no new friend thing, right? To me, that is all just red flags about you. That says more about you than other people. And so to me, that does like to me, it's like the type of trauma thing, a trauma response to something that has happened with you. Sometimes women can be shady and all the things, but all your friends can't be shady. Like all of them can't be. Oh, okay.
Man.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
Why?
When you are operating from a place of trauma, when trauma's writing your story, it is writing your friendships. If you don't understand, I literally just left my session just now before we hopped on talking about this. I help people to understand their standards of relationship.
Okay.
If you don't know, and I can't tell you how many people, all of them that I work with, when I start working with them, they don't know what that is. So if you don't know that you need, for me, integrity, follow through, consistency, trust, respect, right? You're building friendships off of, just like with your romantic relationships. It's off of what feels good. Versus I'm looking for character traits. And so if trauma's been writing my story and it chooses my relationships, and we can key, but there's no alignment. I don't feel supported by you because I don't know to look for that. I might be aligned with some shady folk. If I haven't done my work and maybe I'm shady, all my people around me might be shady. But
Okay.
the whole friendship thing, people do the no new friends and they don't fool with chicks. It's absolute trauma response. That becomes a rigid boundary. And it's because the world has taught them that it's not safe to trust. Women have maybe failed them. Maybe they didn't have healthy boundaries. Maybe they don't know how to trust. Maybe life taught them that vulnerability is not safe. And so they don't align with what feels dangerous to them. So it is absolutely oftentimes a trauma response, and maybe even a learned behavior. Because if my mom ain't got no female friends. I have them, but I'm a cycle breaker, right? But if I were to just learn and accept what was passed down to me, I too would be like, I ain't fooling with no chick, because I definitely learned.
Okay. So this podcast is called Sex with Ashley. So let's talk about sex for a second. Yeah. Okay. So how does trauma show up in our romantic relationships? And then how can we break the cycle of that?
Absolutely. So in chapter 4, when trauma picks your partner, I talk about the impact of trauma on shame. Trauma will write your story with sex, right? And it's full of shame, especially in our community where, sex is not discussed. It's don't do it. That's it. Begins and stops there, right? I became a sex therapist because I was also a teen mom, and there was no education in my house. I had my first child at 18, and it was just, just don't do it. Baby, that don't work. Okay. So I committed to educating Black women around their bodies, their pleasure. We have been taught to prioritize the pleasure of others, and I'm coming to disrupt all of that.
Okay.
And I also want to teach the youth and young adults about sexual health and education, not just the aspect of fear, but I'm going to show you some stuff. you're gonna be afraid. But we're also gonna talk about the pleasure aspect and how to prioritize that. So when the trauma has written the beginning of your story, and maybe there is sexual trauma, sexual abuse, romantic trauma, all of those things cause the women that I help every single day with pain with sex, because there's a lot of anxiety, performance anxiety, things that we work through, just trauma around it in the narratives, right? That I am only having sex to please my partner,
Mm-hmm.
and they are nowhere in their decision. And so trauma will definitely steal pleasure and has stolen a lot of people's pleasure. It's not even on their menu. They're only concerned with pleasing others, or they don't have sex at all or pleasure at all, because sex is only one way to experience pleasure, because there's fear behind it, religious hurt, right? It's a sin.
Because I was gonna talk about that. I was gonna talk about. I get this question a lot. I get this question from because I grew up in the church, right? And so I get a question a lot of like how when the church has told you sex is the sin and it's wrong, wrong, wrong. So you've been hearing that for 20 years. How do you get over that to be able to enjoy sex? Even sometimes people who are married, even people who have like Christians or who have saved themselves for marriage, they still can't get over the what's in their head, what they've been taught all these years. So how can someone like get over that? What can they do?
So that is a specific one that I use narrative therapy with, and I help them to reauthor their relationship in sex, right? We can utilize scripture where the Bible says that, nah, I'm a somewhat of a heathen, but I'm a believer too, right? I don't know it verbatim, but I know the Bible says what you do in your business is your business. What you do in your bedroom is your business, right? And so reauthoring, giving yourself permission. I work with so many women to give themselves permission to experience pleasure. I help them to understand that as women, as people with vulvas, we are the only creatures on this earth that have organs that are specifically for pleasure. And if we are made in God's image, then we deserve pleasure. Pleasure
Mhm.
is our birthright. And so I will give them assignments like literally rewriting their story, writing a love letter to themselves, writing a love letter to the person who has been taught and trained to believe all of these untruths about themselves. And, how do they talk to their partners about it?
Mm-hmm.
I work with couples that, where the one or both of them have these unhealthy narratives around sex and pleasure. And so it's a lot of dismantling and deconstructing. I'm also work with collaborative language systems is a theory also that I use. And we deconstruct that thing. We pull it back like an onion and we look at we identify the underlying issues and how do we address that? And it is in grace, forgiveness, and reauthoring.
I met this couple at one point in time. They were engaged, and the guy said to me, "Really cute couple. Like they were like aesthetically, they all matched." Now, I don't think they are probably going to work out long term, and that's because the guy told me he was like he likes basically like a word. He likes this nasty type of sex, right? Like he likes to slut out his people, his women that he's with, right? And the woman he's with now currently, she's the opposite of that. She's doesn't perform how he likes. And so I asked him, I said, well, did you talk to her about it, or did y'all have a conversation about it? And he was like, yeah, but it's like, I said, did you tell her what you wanted? He's like, yeah, but some things you just can't teach. Okay, cool. And then he was like, and then like, she's not the type of girl to do that. Like he was assigning certain types of sex with certain type of women. And he felt like for whatever reason, I guess because she was getting ready to be his wife, I don't know, that wasn't the type of sex that she should be having. And I was like, so, but this is the type of sex that you want, right? And then y'all getting ready to get married. So how that's going to work. So he didn't really have an answer. And I was like, okay. As people have these narratives in their mind of what, like back to your point, these narratives in their mind about what sex is or what it should be or what is not. And I've seen this with men too, particularly with men, just from my experience. They feel like certain types of sex or for sex you do with like your mistress as my wife, you shouldn't be doing these types of things. And I just don't understand that, because like if this is the person that you want to spend your life with, why would you not want to do all the things with this person? And why are you just assigning certain types of sex to certain people. Like I just don't get it. But men, I know men who do that.
Absolutely. I work with couples all day long where they put their partners in a box
Yes.
because society has told them that this is what a wife is, this is what a mother is. And if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't fit here, then it's off limits. But then now you want that to be the justification why you stepped out because you weren't satisfied when some people don't want to be slutted out,
Yeah.
right?
True.
This is one of the things I forgot to mention is I'm a frequent contributor to platforms like Essence, Cosmopolitan, and all the places, right? And one of my most recent contributions was about pleasure and how pleasure is what was it? Pleasure outside of penetration. And so I help couples to widen and enhance their definition of sex and
Okay.
also to have the hard conversations. I use a tool called the yes, no, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
form where there's a variety of sexual experiences on this form. And I'll give it to both of them. If it's yes, cool, check it off. If it's a no, cool, check it off. If it's a maybe. The point of the tool is conversation because although a woman might not want anal with a dildo, but maybe she might want to try a little finger or
Mm-hmm.
something, right? So if you don't have the conversation and you just, I'm not doing this, and you don't understand that there could be variations to your sex life.
Mm-hmm.
And so some things we definitely are going to talk about sexual boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just no. And I don't care what the variation is, right? But when you have disappointment surrounding something sexual, how do you handle that? So I help couples to understand that disappointment is a hard emotion to feel, but it's emotion just like anything else, and you're gonna feel it.
Right.
And so how do we create sexual alignment?
So how do we rewrite the narrative? Like what how do we begin to do that?
So first step is awareness,
Okay.
right? Being aware of if we're talking about trauma, if we're talking about something that's not in alignment with who you are today, it's awareness. Identifying what ways those show up in your relationships, in all the different work, friendship, romance, first starting with you.
Okay.
So awareness, and then interrupting those patterns by creating new ones, going to therapy, right? You don't have to, that's not the only form of healing. Therapy, self-help, coaching, talking to someone with some insight, journaling, but doing some kind of practice to recognize what's healthy, what's not, what works for you, and then giving yourself permission to do something different. You may not have learned all the things, growing up. Maybe you learned some very unhealthy things, but understanding that you have the power to rewrite that story. So rewriting is all about rewriting the narrative. It's journaling. It's what works for me. It's identifying my values, principles, and morals today and making decisions from that place. That is how you reauthor.
So you are a therapist and a coach. So when does someone need therapy versus when does someone need coaching? How can you know which category you fall under?
So therapy is very specific. If someone has some mental health concerns, they are not appropriate for coaching. When I say mental health concerns, I'm talking about like untreated. Maybe they have untreated depression. Maybe there's suicidal ideation. That person they are a better fit for therapy.
Okay.
But relationship coaching, right? Somebody who wants to work on self-esteem, self-love, their relationship with their partner, but in mental health is contained, so to speak. It's being managed. You have a toolbox. You utilize that toolbox. Now you can be somebody that's better for coaching. But there is some overlap. When you're a therapist, you can do the relationship coach and the mental health. When you are a coach, you should not be crossing that barrier.
So in terms of trauma, so if let's do relationship. So in terms of trauma, when is there certain topics or certain things that couples should get therapy for, or could they just go to coaching for it all? I'm just like, what is like, as a couple, this is a therapy type of topic.
So because I am rooted in therapy, my master's is in family, couples, and individual psychotherapy, and then I have a postgraduate certification in sex therapy. 100% say if you have sexual trauma and you have not processed it, if you have sexual trauma, you have not processed it. If you have generational dysfunction and you've not processed it, These are topics for therapy. If
Okay.
there's a history of abuse, you've not processed it. These are topics for therapy.
Okay. Good. So, Naquan, when does your book come out? Is it already out? When's your book come out?
This book drops on Tuesday, May 6th.
May 6th.
May 6th. It is here. It will be on sale for about 48 hours. For the Kindle version will be on sale for 48 hours for $2.99. So you ain't got no reason to not get it. And this book is for you if you keep picking the same partner over and over and there's no alignment. This book is for you if you are at work, because we didn't really talk about the corporate piece. But
Okay.
if you show up at work and you want people to take credit for your work, because maybe you learned growing up that your voice didn't matter. You play small because you step back from the spotlight, because that's where it was safe. If in your romantic relationships or in your friendships, you overgive and overgive and overgive into depletion and there's no ROI.
Mm-hmm.
If you struggle with self-love because maybe you weren't affirmed and actually you were criticized, this book is for you. If you want a blueprint to show up effectively in love in today and not just where you come from, this book is for you.
And so where can they purchase the book? I know you said Kindle, but outside of Kindle, where can they purchase the book?
So initially it's going to be on Amazon for launch week, and then it will be available on my website, NaquanLewis.com.
Can you spell that?
Yes, NIKQUANLEWIS.com. And there's also a quick assessment on there for anybody who is curious. What you and I were talking about, if you don't know if trauma is still rewriting your story, there's a quick assessment on there that will tell you.
That's cute. I like that. So, Naquan, thank you for joining us today. And people buy the book if you are someone who and I think everyone has trauma, honestly. No matter how great of a childhood or things you had going on, I think we all carry some type of trauma into our adulthood that we still have to work through and work around. So, this is probably a good book for everybody. Actually, it's.
Statistics shows us that 90% of us have and I'm talking about the world, 90% of the world has experienced at least one traumatic event.
Who are the 10%? Yeah. That's what I would love to know.
I don't know. It ain't me. So I don't know.
Like, who? Me neither. Like, who are 10% of people who haven't had no trauma ever in their life? Like, none? But, like, even, like, with people dying, nothing? Like, your pet didn't die? Like, I had a dog that died. And it really, like, traumatized me. So, like, even, like, stuff like that, you haven't had anything?
Yeah, I don't know.
It must be, like, baby. They must be, like, 6 months old or something like that.
Yes, have to be. Because the world is ghetto, especially now with everything going on. The world is ghetto. And so this is the resource that so many of us needed growing up. We didn't even get into like reparenting yourself while you parenting kids. Listen, now that's the real ghetto, okay? And that's in here. So if you are reparenting yourself and you got kids, especially young adults take you out. Maybe get this resource. It's for you.
That is hilarious. See, I don't have any kids, so I can't relate. But for those of you who can relate, buy the book. It's on sale Tuesday, May 6th.
May 6th.